I guess we're on. Hi. Hi, everybody. That was quick. I love my new intro. I hope you like it. I'd like to add some energy to the broadcast. What are we going to call this? A live stream. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Lopan Yudrin coming to you live from Ngakchon Gatsal, the Happy Garden of Practitioners in Oakland, California. Welcome. So, if you haven't been with us before, this is called the World's on Fire live stream. Why is it called that, really? Well, I started the name before we had this current disaster, but life is tough these days, and there's a lot of crises. There's scary things going on. So I want to bring traditional teachings about meditation and Buddhism together with how are we coping and working with the situation as it is, and now we find ourselves in a very harsh circumstances. I hope you're well and your family are well. So what we do is integrate meditation with some information, and that's what we're going to do in this hour. I hope you can hear me. Yep, looks like you can. If anybody's here, come in and say hi in the comments section. I have a question of the day for my live audience today. Audience isn't quite the right word, is it? You guys who are going to sit with me, my comrades, who I am so impressed with. The question of the day is, do you feel confident and strong in your meditation practice? So think about that and put your comments in the box there, and we'll come back and touch on this later, see what you have to say. But do say hello if you're online with me. Sometimes the people pop up, I can see how many people are participating, and sometimes that little box doesn't pop up on my screen. But either way, there's always people who are watching after the fact. Quite a lot of people watch after the fact. So I want to say hello to you too. If you need to, reach out to me. You can always go to the comments section. The live comments close down, but the comments below don't. Please like and subscribe. And also, if you have any questions, go down there and I'll see those comments. And I'll answer them the following week or get back to you personally if I can. Hey, so today's topic is Dudjom Rinpoche, Treasure Revealer. What does that mean? If you've been with us the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about the life of the great 20th century master, Dudjom Rinpoche. And Jigtrul Yeshe Dorje was his full name. Who was born in 1904 and died in 1987. In this kind of devotional Buddhism, Vajrayana Buddhism, you actually saying died is a dud. Died is a dud. You don't say die, you say passed into parinirvana, because they are presumed to have attained great, and actually for a being like this, the feeling you want to go into it with is like they emanated from a state of utterly pure, stainless peace, only for the benefit of living beings, appeared as a teacher for a while, and then withdrew that appearing body back into the vastness. And so we don't use words like died. Do we have a... No, that's sort of too cheerful. I'm trying to get a sound effect for that. No, still too cheerful. We'll figure some gloomy sound to put there for duds. Anyway, I'm going to start at the beginning, since I don't know, what your background is as watchers of this now or in the future. And so I want to go back and kind of give some context for what a treasure revealer is. Dudjom Rinpoche himself, we've been talking about. He was born and raised in his early life in an area called Pemako, or sometimes it has like this adjective on it, the hidden land of. So that's a noun. Pemako, very beautiful, remote area that's supposed to have many power places or spirit places of special spiritual depth. And he was recognized as the reincarnation or rebirth of Dudjom Rinpoche, a great figure who had said told people he was going to go to Pemaka and sent out actually his people ahead of when he actually passed. And anyway, we won't go back over that, but please, feel free to go back and see what we've talked about so far. So today was we were supposed to be moving to his time in central Tibet. Pemaka is eastern, more on the eastern direction of Tibet, and so we're going to begin to talk about his kind of inner life, as much as he talked about it, and share with people. And then why and how he moved into central Tibet. Why am I going into all this detail? Well, I didn't intend to. I started out thinking, well, we're just going to do some easy stuff for a while. We're going to talk about great masters of the past and, who everybody loves. And we'll just look at pictures of them, hear a little bit about them, and meditate, relax. We say in this kind of Buddhism, merge your mind with theirs. They try to take in their energy, the sense you get of them, and integrated that into you. But as I got into it, I realized there was so much I didn't know. I knew the broad strokes, but he had a whole life in Tibet before he came into exile in Bhutan, India, Nepal. So it was, he came by the time he left Tibet at age 50, he was one of the two most respected, universally acclaimed and respected leaders of the Nyingma tradition of Tibetan Buddhism. And he was already established himself. And another thing I discovered as I got into it, really thinking about it, was, if you see pictures of photographs, people love to post photographs of Dudjom Rinpoche on like Facebook, and because he's such a beautiful man, and also because it inspires them. But this you wouldn't be able to tell from these photos of this beautiful, precise, what are we going to say, peaceful man who's sitting like a king in meditation, that it was actually a period like ours of chaos, uncertainty, desperation. From beginning in the 20s when trouble started in Tibet, interiorly, and then the 50s when external forces invaded Tibet or began to get inroads, and then to late 50s when disaster struck and many people fled into exile, many people died in starvation, disease, and also murder, especially later due to political factors. There was just the whole situation crumbled. It seemed had been stable for 1,000 years. Nothing's ever stable, Maybe people 500 years ago would think things were completely chaotic, but people had a sense of Buddhism being their heart and their culture. And they were at the brink of losing that because forces came in, the communist forces, the Chinese, and labeled Buddhism as bad, and their culture is bad, and tried to wipe it out. Similar kind of in a way to Native Americans. So that's a lot right there. But Treasure Revealer, what we haven't been talking, we've been talking about his education and the sort of miraculous capabilities he had as a very young child. Feel free to say hi in the comments box if there's anybody out there with us. And Oh, there's 4 people. Now I see where the little measure is. Wonderful. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you. Um, so I apologize if you have a background in what a treasure revealer is, Tirtan, then I'm going to go back and give some real general outlines of what the whole phenomenon is, because someone asked for it, and we can do more later. I've been rereading Tuku Tundup's master work called Hidden Teachings of Tibet, I believe. It came out a long time ago. I picked it up and I looked in the thank yous, the acknowledgments in the front, and it said, thank you so much to Dudjom Rinpoche for helping me work out the finer points of this. That's how old this book is. Tuku Tundup is fortunately still with us, as far as I know. I think we'd hear about it if he wasn't. So there's that. It was interesting tie-in. So I'm going to go through a little bit about what Tuku Tundup says as his background. He says, well, first of all, he gave a background about all Buddhism. So can I really go there? So there's what's called the 3 yanas, or 3 sort of broad movements of Buddhism in this world. And one is the original early teachings of the Dharma, which were focused on maintaining, being a virtuous and pure monastic mainly, and having beautiful, pristine conduct, and pacifying your own mind with shamatha meditation, the calm abiding meditation, like the kind we usually do here. And then also, but really watching your outer conduct. So your outer conduct is very regulated, and you remove yourself from the stimulus of anything that might cause you to engage in misconduct, harming any sentient being, sexual misconduct, and so forth, in a remote location. That's the kind of the feel, and I'm being non-technical here because I want to, we're on YouTube. So that movement still exists. And it's much more rich than what I'm describing, but that's sort of the feel. And it has a whole body of texts, the original sutras or teachings of the Buddha. That it's a beautiful tradition. And the surviving school is the Theravadan school. And where can you find many, many people teach Vipassana meditation, Shamatha meditation, here in the United States. And indeed, the whole mindfulness movement was plucked out of the Vipassana, the Shamatha and Vipassana meditations, and taken out as a secular movement of meditation for the general public. So it's very easy to understand and suitable to a lot of people. If we're lay people, we just try to take a few vows, most basically not harming any sentient beings. That sort of encompasses all of them, right? Just don't hurt any sentient beings. Try to foster loving kindness towards sentient beings, etc. Sentient beings means, all living beings. So then there's another movement called Mahayana Buddhism, or the Bodhisattva Yana. Yana means vehicle, actually. So it's another broad movement. And it mainly took root, so where Hinayana, I use that word, that is considered disrespectful these days. The early tradition of Buddhism took root in the sort of southern Asian countries, mostly. And then as it went north, different things were emphasized in practice and conduct. And that became, your inner motivation became, there were still plenty of monks and nuns, there are in every Buddhist tradition. We always treat them with respect. But there became a movement also of lay people who integrated, the cultivation of great compassion, the cultivation of patience, generosity, and so on, all the good qualities of a great being. And were made offerings to the Buddhas, and pulled out certain sutras that were teachings of the Buddha that were harmonious with this, and each different school emphasized a different sutra or body of, or a few sutras, teachings that were the most important, they thought were the most important and pivotal. So like one, trend was going towards a sutra that was wherein a great Buddha named Amitabha in a Western Pure Land promised everyone they would, all they had, that they would be welcomed into his Pure Land at the moment of passing. So their whole movements, there's a variety of them, are a lot of it's based on just saying thank you, Amitabha, and reciting the name of Amitabha. There's another whole, there's many. Anyway, it's a vast world from Zen, which is very, they have their rituals, but very much about silent sitting, and but with the heart of this great awakened warrior, putting everyone's welfare before your own. And you'll see also in this in charitable works, where in Hong Kong and Taiwan, for example, there's a big tie-in between monasteries and vast charitable works. And the idea is not viewed as likely you're going to gain any kind of enlightenment in this lifetime, but over many, 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 many lifetimes by cultivating good qualities and marrying the practice of compassion cultivating practices with emptiness, non-conceptual meditations like Zen, for example. They're often married together. Slowly, slowly, you can become an incredible great being. And you make a vow to return again and again only to benefit sentient beings. Then in Tibet and Japan, all the Himalayan areas around Tibet, out of India came a movement that was called the Vajrayana. Vajra has many meanings, but it means emptiness itself, indestructibility, many, it's a rich symbolic term. But in practical terms, it was a movement of people that were forged a relationship with, tight relationship, personal relationship with a teacher or guru in the Tibetan language, translated as Lama in Tibetan, and really blossomed in Tibet. And then through sort of a real devotional relationship with a teacher, they guided you through a multiplicity of practices. One of the ways that Vajrayana is defined is like, it's the basis is the motivation, bodhisattva motivation of the Mahayana, but there's so many techniques, and but you don't go around just picking and choosing, because right now we have a kind of, we start out, if we haven't done any meditation, for example, in any tradition, with a real messy mind, right? It's just chaos in there. There's an endless stream of thoughts, one leading to the next, to the next. Our attention is jerked around here for what we want, jerked away for what we don't want, and it's a big mess inside our minds. And we're all also focused on cogitation, and we never get into the state beyond cognition. We never find that, the strata, I want to use that word, it's kind of illegal. We never find there's this radio signal, and then there's the message that comes across that radio. There's a blah, blah, blah that goes on the radio. Then there's if you turn to an empty channel, there's a channel without any blah, blah, blah on it. And there you begin to get a sense of the actual nature of things as they really are. because everything isn't filtered through your messy mind. And it's a happy thing. So where am I going with that? The Lama guides you to that place because they are there. They've become acculturated or trained in keeping their mind this sort of open, relaxed, non-conceptual framework, then being able to have thoughts pop up and do the mental work that needs to be done. So this is my own like off the cuff description of Vajrayana in a nutshell. Guidance by a teacher. You don't practice by trying to find emptiness on one side and then compassion or appearances on another side, like you're trying to find some world away from this world. It's all intermixed, and the world becomes like, you ever heard of a mandala? Like where you're in the center, and you're like a Buddha in the center of your own sacred circle. And the mandala itself, like the wind blowing through those trees, you begin to see everything very purely. The wind blowing through, I'm looking out my window. I don't have a camera there today. Blowing on my prayer flags is Samayatara, the female Buddha. So you see the wind is totally pure, free of any mental judgment or construct. It is totally pure. And water is Mamaki. And all the beings around you, they're completely enlightened Buddhists. They may not know it yet. And so you see everything as it actually is before it's contaminated with our mental defilements. I'm not saying I do, but you get glimpses as you go along. And your teacher guides you along that path. So it's not for everybody, but everybody can have appreciation and joy. Like they do, everybody is not a student of the Dalai Lama, right? But hundreds of thousands of people love the Dalai Lama. So today we'll talk about Dudjom Rinpoche and a different Dharma tradition. So the reason I gave that background is that in the Mahayana tradition I talked about, it was very common for realized beings to really traverse all those lifetimes of merit making, cultivating wisdom and merit, to have, what do they call it? Concealment and rediscovery is the word that Tukutundup used. Like there were vast Dharma teachings in the sky, like in that wind out there. There was a Dharma teaching that was very important that came forth. There were teachings hidden in mountains, trees, inside beings, and some spontaneously would arise inside the great masters of the past. This was normal way before Dharma even came to Tibet. And many of these are like commentaries, like Maitreya's 5 treatises, is it? So forth. And some were entrusted then, this is how you think, they were given to a naga, like a dragon or a sea monster, to hold on to for some future time when they were needed, and then some master retrieved them. So it's mystical. Let's just be honest. That's how we would look at it. So that sort of set the stage for this idea of hiding spiritual treasures and then rediscovering them later, maybe centuries or 1,000 years later, 1,500 years later. A holy object, or a teaching, or a liturgy, and so forth, would be hidden in rocks and water physically, some quasi-physically, and wherever you can imagine. And then also in the minds of disciples. So here we come to Guru Rinpoche Pavasambhava. Now, are you familiar with Guru Rinpoche? put a comment in the box if you know who Guru Rinpoche is. And I'm going to throw a picture up here on the screen of a typical representation. Of course, we don't have photographs of Guru Rinpoche. He came in the 8th century to Tibet, and he was a great heroic figure who established the Dharma in Tibet when it had been shaky there for a while. There were a lot of opposing forces, sort of elemental forces, and people. And he's the sort of like the father of Tibetan Buddhism, especially according to the school, the Nyingma school, which follows Guru Rinpoche's teachings primarily. Isn't that a beautiful statue? I love that statue. I can't remember whose Facebook feed I got that from. I'm thinking Bhutanese. What do you think? So, Guru Rinpoche, these are all symbolic ornaments that he has here, representing important spiritual values and his qualities. Guru Rinpoche is believed to have taught teachings, given teachings that weren't appropriate to his time, and that then he foresaw in his big and awakened mind that in the future they would be necessary for sentient beings. So, and they'd be of great benefit, but people weren't ready for him then, or they weren't appropriate for that time. So he hid them, but he has enlisted the support of his best disciple, Yeshe Sogya. Oh, that's her script. That's good. We're going to put that script up there. I didn't know we could put multiple up at the same time. This is wonderful. Yeshe Sogya. Let's see an image of Yeshe Sogya. Oh, there you go. Maybe we'll pull her script down away again. And Yeshe Sogya was had a incredible memory. So she had like a complete perfect memory, and she was a scribe also. She would write down these teachings, and she would be assigned to go hide them. And then he also had 25 main disciples, and they also heard these teachings. So what can happen is some were hidden by Yeshe Sogya as physical script, so forth. Some, let me try to bring, let's see, how do I get that? Oh, okay, we'll bring her out here. And so I'm going to show you, bring up the script again. Scroll. This is a Dakini script. So they'd be written in this coded script. And it's not like the whole text was put there. It was like a line or two, usually. This was yellow originally. It's faded. This is from Lama Zopa's collection. And the script is like, looks kind of like Tibetan, kind of like Sanskrit, Burmese, all these kind of scripts, and they vary from each other. But it's not identical. It's called Dayak or Dakini writing. It's not identical. It's not, you can't read it. A normal person can't read it. But if you were the rebirth of one of Guru Rinpoche's 25 disciples and you were there, and Guru Rinpoche sort of assigned this to you, this is mystical stuff, people. Guru Rinpoche said, okay, you, Drokben Lotsawa, you are going to you're going to be reborn in 1904, and you're going to need this, people are desperately going to need this particular practice. And so when you see that script, it'll be like a key that will open up the whole practice in your mind. So they actually would literally, like, say in the case of Dudjom Rinpoche, we're going to go through the life of Dudjom Rinpoche, so why don't we use him as an example? They would get a list. Each treasure revealer would get a list of treasures that they were going to reveal in their lifetime. And it would be delivered to them, perhaps on a yellow scroll or perhaps in a vision. And they would write it down, and then they'd know that these were destined treasures for them. And his previous life was as Drukpan Lossawa in the lifetime of Guru Rinpoche. This is a whirlwind tour through Terma. Okay? So there were mind treasures, which just basically dawned in the mind of these reincarnate beings who were Rinpoche's disciple in a previous life. And there were earth treasures, which usually had a yellow scroll, rolled up piece of paper with Dakini writing on it. And there's other kinds of experiences that great masters can have that don't require Guru Rinpoche being involved. If you're really a highly realized being, you too can have sudden revelation. You can have a visit from I know a Tirtan, believe it or not, from Tibet, who he could see Karma Lingpa, another Tirtan from the 1300s, and he just took dictation from him for a text. That's called pure vision, more of a pure vision experience. Anyway, all right. How are we going to integrate this with practice for us ordinary people right now? I think first we'll talk about what happened. So 5 years old, Dudjom Rinpoche was still in Pimlico, and he began finding these treasure caskets. And sometimes you'll see pictures of these in Tugatunda's book and elsewhere, where they look like a rock, but a strangely shaped rock. And he found a beautiful black stone when he was playing next to the Malankota River in Pimlico. He was playing with other children, and it looked like a sun and a moon. In Tantric Buddhism, the sun and the moon are visualized as flat, but with some depth to them. And so the sun would be a disk and the moon would be a disk, and they come together like that. We call it Nida. Nima is sun, Dawa is moon. They come together like that. So it's kind of like a little, I have a little box like that, a special box, like an amulet, hollow. And when he shook it, it made a sound. That's an unusual stone. There are some geodes, but this was not like a natural stone. It was a Terma casket. And these girls seemed to come out of nowhere. This is his memory from oh, actually, this is later. So they handed him treasure caskets, and his stepfather said that he had all kinds of visionary experiences and so forth when he was just 5. But it was at 13 years old when things really started, 1917. Things really started to blossom for him. There were some girls playing with him, whether they were visionary girls or actual physical girls with special qualities. It's not stated. It's kind of assumed they're visionary girls. At age 13, they handed him a code, so like this yellow paper covered with symbolic syllables. I don't have a picture of Dudjom Rinpoche's yellow papers because he didn't keep them, the early ones. And many magical events and occurrences started to happen. And I think that encounter with the girls ended up being the seed for later discovery of the Khandro Tuktik cycle. But he saw Guru Rinpoche directly. But over time, it seemed that he also had he received empowerments ceremonies, instructive notifications, these lists of terma, and he was given the name by them Garwang Dudjom Rinpoche, his Tibetan name. So he started discovering these texts. They started to blossom in his mind, and he started recording them. For example, in Dorje Drolo was a wrathful manifestation of Guru Rinpoche. He was practicing another Dorje Drolo Guru Rinpoche sadhana, practice text, and suddenly a whole practice text of his own just dawned in his mind, not of his own, from Guru Rinpoche, dawned in his mind. Boom. And it happened again when he got the whole sort of big picture. I don't know whether he wrote it down at that time or not. I don't think so. And at 24, he was practicing another Dorje Drolo text. And it came forth again. Every time he would practice Dorje Drolo, he had a feeling, he had strong visions and so forth of a text of his own. Two treasures were destined to be his. But he was sworn to, Guru Rinpoche and Yeshe Sogyal told him that he really shouldn't tell anybody about that. And it wasn't until he was like much, much older, we'll get to that probably next week, that he actually was able to write down and reveal. He was able to write down earlier, but he practiced throughout his life this Dorje Drolo text. And then way later on, he was given the okay to go ahead and present it to the world. And this is quite common for treasure revealers, that you're not supposed to just run out right away as soon as you have received one of these revelations. You're supposed to practice it and wait, and there may even be a period of time that you're told at the time that it's going to be X number of years before you should share it with anyone. So, they told him that he was the regent of Guru Rinpoche, Padmasambhava, in the present day, in the early 20th century. And it just went on and on, vision after vision after vision, much like his predecessor, Dudjom Rinpoche. He was 50 when it finally was time to release that text, which we have. This. We practice in Dudjom Teresars groups. Dorje Drolo, that particular practice is not something you jump in right when you're starting Dharma, starting Vajrayana even. It's pretty, it's very intense, and people, you have to have a real stable mind before you go into practicing a lot of Dorje Drolo. That's what they say, because it costs lots of, it's purifying a lot inside and transforming a lot inside you, so a lot of strange things can happen after doing it. I can attest to that. I haven't really practiced. It's the practice I've done the least of the main practices of the Dudjom treasure tradition. So just in brief, the main sadhana practices or liturgies, and liturgy is such a lame word to apply to them. The practices we do with the text, with mantra recitation, with visualization, all of these are part of the Vajrayana tradition. The main ones that came to Dudjom Rinpoche were the practice of Yeshe Sogyal, peaceful Dakini Yeshe Sogyal, peaceful Lama, Soki Tuktik, Likborn Vajra, which is Guru Rinpoche's long life deity in union with Mandaraba. And then Putri Rekpong, the razor that destroys at the touch. The razor that destroys at the touch. At a touch is one translation of that. Which became very widespread and practiced widely at monasteries and in this very house. And so that's 3. And then we have, that's Guru Yidam Dakini. Then the wrathful Guru is Guru Dorje Trollo. And the wrathful Dakini is Dudjom Rinpoche's, what? Troma Nakma. I see you here. Say hi in the box if you want to connect. And so these are the 5 major practices we do in the Tersar tradition these days, because Dudjom Rinpoche emphasized them. So he took the, but there's countless practices in this. If you put together Dudjom Rinpoche's treasured discoveries, Dudjom Rinpoche's, and then actually you can go back through all their past lives, and before that, Dundul Dorje from Katok Monastery was the previous life of, I believe, or 1 or 2 lives before, and he had his own treasure tradition. Occasionally those were drawn upon. Is that unfamiliar enough for those of you who are familiar with the Dudjom Tersar? You know all this, and for those of you who've never heard about Vajrayana before, you're like, what? Yeah, so I'm going to show, I think what we're going to do is transition Dudjom Rinpoche. He, as a teen, he traveled around, putting it together with his outer life again. He traveled around to the different monasteries of the Nyingma tradition. He specialized mainly in Nyingma practices, but he held some Kagyu traditions as well, I've heard. He went to Katok, he went to Dorje Drak, he went to Tarje Timpoling. I don't know what that is. That was listed though. And he went to Mindraling in central Tibet, and he was to Mindraling that he really connected the most with Mindraling. So he went back to Mindraling and studied there for a more extended period of time, learned all their rituals, and he became, of course he learned a lot of ritual from his lamas in Pemaka, but he became like the consummate ritual master. And the consummate Vajra dance, they call it Cham, the most elegant dancer. Integrating practice with dance is one of the most sublime practices in Vajrayana. And he became the most eloquent writer. And everything he set his mind to, even practices, where other people would need to do, months or years of a practice to gain, siddhis and so forth, miraculous occurrences would occur, very few days after starting the practice. He didn't need to strive the way that ordinary people like myself do. So he traveled around his teens, but his home base was Pimlico, and he was establishing a community of both Ngakpas or non-monastic practitioners, as well as monks. 2 different Gompas are temples there. And then he ran afoul of politics. And the politics there was another monastery there didn't want him. He was clearly, building up a vast following. Everybody in Pemmico, it's a small area then and now, was gaining devotion to him. It's not in text. It's not elaborated exactly what happened, but it was a lama affiliated with Sera Monastery in central Tibet, which is a big, powerful monastery affiliated close to the government. One of the 3 biggest monasteries in Tibet. Said, you can't do that. And he complained to the government about them. And the government was sectarian forces had infiltrated the government. There was, in the 1920s, a young monk who was a brilliant writer and so forth in the Gelugpa tradition, unfortunately fell fell prey to his own sectarianism and launched all sorts of sectarian campaigns to especially against the Nyingma school and the Kagyu school of Tibetan Buddhism. It wasn't a pretty time, but you know, it wasn't Shangri-La. Tibet was not Shangri-La. It was an amazing culture, and the Dharma, a beautiful contribution to the world. So the Tibetan government came down and said, you can't do this. Ultimately, he tried everything. He tried sending this is an oral report I got from one of my lamas. He sent one of his main disciples and to Lhasa to petition the government on his behalf. And they tortured him and put him in a box of salt. The lower half of his body was completely encased in salt, which is torture for days and days. And somebody came and heard about him and rescued him. He had disabilities for the rest of his life. I don't remember his name. Unfortunately, I'm not very good when I was the driver for lamas, and I didn't have a pen and paper much of the time when stories were being told to me. So it was unfortunate. It was before, this is way before our beloved Dalai Lama, 14th Dalai Lama of today, who was a non-sectarian. During the declining years of the 13th, who was also a good leader. And then there was a gap there where the new Dalai Lama was a juvenile and didn't have any power. And all these sectarian forces were controlling the government. So he had to stop what he was doing in Pemaka. And for a long time, it seems like a lot of this is not filled in the histories you see of Dudjom Rinpoche, except you'll read in other people's stories that I met up with Dudjom Rinpoche in such and such a place. It's 6:46 and we haven't meditated at all. I knew it would be like this. You know, I started to think, oh, it'd be easy. First, when I started talking, it's like I said, you know, I'm just going crazy in a really good way, diving into the life of Dudjom Rinpoche. So he ended up going to central Tibet. And here is there's a bunch of photographs. It may all be from Sami Monastery. This is when he gave empowerments. Whoops, that's Sami Monastery as it is today. Probably an accurate reconstruction of what it was like back then. It was all, during the Cultural Revolution in the 60s, everything was destroyed. Most monasteries were destroyed in Tibet. But he was invited there to give a big series of empowerments. You can see him here with a lot of important lamas of the day. I think that's Dudjom Rinpoche up there. And then Minling Chum Rinpoche and various other dignitaries there. Because this is a tent environment. And this throne, you see that mark there on that throne? It's in all these other pictures I'm going to show you. Let's make this bigger for you. Do you thinking that's too small? Is that picture too small? Give me a comment if you think it is. See the wonderful way they would do outdoor, you know, a lot of people in Tibet were nomads. See that shrine room? Compare it to our shrine room. Here's a shrine room. Here's my shrine room right now. Well, it's in color. I'll give it that. And it's much less grand. But this is kind of the style of Tibetan shrine rooms. You can see this is live in my shrine room. I wish you could be here. Drums, common feature, these tormas, these ritual offerings and representations of the sublime beings. Offering substances such as more tormas. Here I'm offering water in the various water bowls. I don't know if you can see my pointer or not, can you? Probably not, right? And then here is the throne for Dudjom Rinpoche. You'll see these all over the place. When I went to Bhutan, they loved Dudjom Rinpoche there. And really helped the Dudjom lineage and Dudjom Rinpoche and his family tremendously. you'll come into a little shrine, and you'll see Dudjom Rinpoche on this elevated platform called a throne, which made people visit. You remember there were no video monitors or anything like that. The Lama had to be raised up as also, it shows esteem for the Dharma and for the teachings to be given, and of course for the Lama. And but it was on a practical level, you want the Lama to be raised up so you can see him. And here's some shorter throne, we call it. It's a throne table. That's the throne. Yeah. So this gives you an idea of the bright colors and joy in a Tibetan shrine room. So on that note, let's pretend we're in the shrine room. I haven't gotten a long enough cord to be out there myself right now. And do a little meditation. Okay, friends? So I'm sorry I talk so much, but I hope it's been interesting to you. Let me know if you have any questions about the early days of Dudjom Rinpoche before the time that he was leaving Bamako and going to Central Tibet, or any other questions you have about Dudjom Rinpoche. And why don't we just sit and practice for a few minutes. Sorry, it'll be like 5 minutes, probably. Here you go. Oh, that was nice. Let me put up another picture here. Of course, there. You see the same thing here, but the background looks a little different. It might have been the same occasion. He looks younger here, doesn't he? And then here's another one where he looks a little older, right? But the same circle is here, and the circle here. It could have been just the way he liked the brocades arranged on his thrones. But quite a magnificent hat, isn't it? Wow. Mostly he dressed like, when he was off the throne, this is for a big ceremonial occasion. Dudjom Rinpoche was a very humble man. He was married later. We'll get to that, more of that next week. Had many, many kids. And he wore the clothes of a lay practitioner. He wasn't in uniform all the time, nor wearing these robes, which are kind of designed to resemble Guru Rinpoche himself, I think. Kind of bring in here, and then we'll bring in let's see here. We've done that one already, right? But you see, same circle here. So that's there. And then here's one with Dudjom Rinpoche. See, oh, I got a like. See, so that's definitely the same time, right? Probably the same day. These two. And these two, same throne for sure. The kata's fallen down more on this side. But you know what I mean? I have a feeling that someone with a camera came in. Personally, I like this up-close one. With good definition, the best. There's many of them like that. Some of them look like they were inside, maybe inside some monastery. Some of them outside. But this one gives you his eyes. Am I right? So let's do one more little meditation. I'm sorry, I'm going to run over a few minutes. Hey there. Lalit, I'm really happy to meet you. I think I've seen you, you may have seen you on Facebook, and then if not, then hello for the first time. Candy, of course, we go way back. Let's bring your note up here. Doesn't that, to me, if you look at Dudjom Rinpoche here, I just feel like I'm a kitten. Oh, Lucas, wonderful. Another friend's on here. And I feel like I'm a kitten. You know how the mother cat will take the kitten by the scruff of the neck, and then the kitten who's been mewing and carrying on just completely relaxes. In this picture, I feel so much blessing from Dudjom Rinpoche that I just completely, my whole body just relaxes. It's like he's right here in our living room, in the shrine room. So let's just, you know, there's so much wealth here that I've jumped around a bit. Let's just mix our minds. So, you know, some of you are Vajrayana practitioners, and you know what you do. But for anybody else who's watching us right now, just have a sense, without overthinking it, that you're merging your mind with Dudjom Rinpoche's mind. You can see it as lights coming out from him and coming into you, or he's dissolving into a ball of light and melting into you. And then you're melting into light yourself. A vast, relaxed mind of the amazing treasure revealer. So, I think we have to leave Dudjom Rinpoche there for this week and come back next week. No, so what do we know? We know that Dudjom Rinpoche had discovered this heart practice of self-visualization as a very wrathling, energetic form of Guru Rinpoche. And he is now kind of a refugee, cast out of his homeland where everybody loved him and supported him. He didn't have a monastery. His predecessor, Dudjom Rinpoche, was very poor. There wasn't something to... It's interesting, they'll talk about him going to go back to Golok. I guess he was done with Golok, where Dudjom Rinpoche lived. There was no money there being passed on to him. So he took up a practice, this manifestation of Guru Rinpoche is like, you can go anywhere, anytime. You can deal with any situation. In fact, moving around is part of the practice. And having no home and dealing with chaos itself is the practice of Dorje Drolo. And this inside, nobody knew that inside he was carrying this personal practice that had been given to him by Yeshe Sogya and Guru Rinpoche Padmasambhava. So if anybody's watching this later and they're thinking, oh, clearly he was schizophrenic. I don't blame you, friends, but have you known lots of schizophrenic people? I have. And you know, they are not like Dudjom Rinpoche. He's totally refined, totally subdued, self-control. His conduct was beautiful. His speech was beautiful. His texts were totally organized. He was one of the most methodical and organized writers. Elegant. And he walked around the streets in his regular clothes. He didn't hold himself above anybody or seem weird to anybody. Dudjom Rinpoche might have seemed a little out there. His previous incarnation, he dressed unusually and so forth. But Dudjom Rinpoche on the outside, a regular person. But Lama Tarchin Rinpoche, who was one of his main disciples, told me, there was no way, if you talk to him, if you engage with Dudjom Rinpoche, everyone was completely, there was absolutely no question that he was a realized being. Believe me, there were lots of pretenders, and just as many pretenders perhaps in Tibet as, pretending to be enlightened, great people. And there were just as many crazy people. No offense to the crazy people here, I love you, as there are now. But people just, I don't know, Namatarcha didn't say they had a kitten feeling. But there was absolutely, people were skeptics, critics. All they had to do was meet him, and unless they were sectarian, nut jobs. And they knew who they were dealing with. They were dealing with Guru Rinpoche himself in the flesh. Oh, emanation of Guru Rinpoche and Yeshe Sogyal and Drukben Lotsawa, one of Guru Rinpoche's main disciples, a translator. All in one. Really a jewel for the 20th century. So the story will go on next week. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Don't forget to practice. Take care. Bye.